The 9th through 13th centuries in the Muslim world marks an era of scientific, religious, philosophical, and cultural development, the scale and depth of which had never been seen in world history before or since. After its meteoric rise from the barren deserts of Arabia, Islamic civilization now encompassed many diverse cultures, religions, and intellectual traditions from Spain to India. In this realm, the previous accomplishments of distant civilizations could be brought together, compared, and built upon to create a new golden age of scientific discoveries. Nowhere else in the world possessed the same capability to bring together so many diverse people, supplemented by homegrown intellectual giants. The result was an era which not only served as a bridge between the knowledge of the ancients and Renaissance Europe but also laid the foundation for today's modern scientific world. The Abbasids, like countless political parties in history, rose to prominence on the back of promises of a positive and idealistic future. Their assurances of a more equitable society and a return to pious leadership helped propel them to prominence as the Umayyads disintegrated. By the early 800s, they had their empire, which stretched from the Atlantic to the Indus. They had the capital, a world city of over 1 million people in Baghdad, and they had the diverse cultures of the Greeks, Copts, Persians, and Indians from which to adopt the best aspects of previous civilizations. It was high time for the inauguration of the idealistic society they promised. In the mind of the 7th Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mamun, 813–833, that future idealistic society could only be achieved through science and rationalism. In order to accomplish this, the various threads of scientific knowledge that existed throughout the empire had to be brought together in a central location. He believed that if the best scholars from the Muslim world could be brought together to learn from each other, limitless possibilities would open up. With this in mind, he established an educational institute in Baghdad known as the House of Wisdom, Arabic, Bayt al-Hikmah. Its scope was such that it defies definition by modern understandings of educational establishments. It was at once a university, library, translation institute, and research lab, all on one campus. Libraries and small schools had existed since Umayyad times, but the emphasis placed on the acquisition of knowledge by the Abbasids far surpassed that of the predecessors. It was said that if a scholar translated any book from its original language into Arabic, he would be given that book's weight in gold. The most renowned scholars, Muslim and non-Muslim, from across the world flocked to Baghdad to be a part of Al-Mamun's project. For the first time in history, the best of Persia, Egypt, India, and former Byzantine lands could be brought together to advance science in ways that would benefit the entire world. Al-Mamun was hardly the only leader in history to have placed particular emphasis on science. What makes the House of Wisdom and the Muslim Golden Age unique is the context in which it all took place. First, the expansive Muslim empire knocked down walls that had previously separated different groups. Before Islam, there would be no reason for a scholar in Alexandria to travel to Ctesiphon to study and teach. Even if he did travel, language barriers would prevent him from being of much use to the Persians. That is the second unique aspect of the early Abbasid era. Arabic became a lingua franca that could unite people from diverse backgrounds. Regardless of if someone's mother tongue was Berber or Syriac or Persian, if he was a Muslim, at least a rudimentary knowledge of Arabic was necessary to pray and read the Quran as the Prophet Muhammad had taught. Arabic thus served not just as a liturgical language, but also one that scientists could use to communicate and research. Thirdly, Islam itself orders the acquisition of knowledge, making scientific research an act of worship. Numerous verses in the Quran and sayings of the Prophet emphasize the role that scholarship has in the life of a pious Muslim. The Prophet was reported to have said that God makes the path to heaven easier for whoever treads the road in search of knowledge. For Muslim scientists, just a few hundred years removed from the life of the Prophet, seeking God's pleasure seems to have been the main reason for their research and studies. Scientific literature from the Golden Age commonly begins with Quranic verses that encourage seekers of knowledge and call on Muslims to reflect on the world around them. These three motivating factors for scientific endeavors were unique to the Muslim world. They could not have existed without the rise of Islam as a geopolitical force in the centuries after the life of the Prophet.